so.
I did that on the wrong account, but that's okay. Okay. All right, so we're good. I'm letting you be the chair. I want nothing to do with it.
No.
We'll call Lynn back. She can just be the chair honorarily. I mean, I put that on the agenda. We need to talk about. So maybe it'd be good to just go around and introduce everyone since we have a fairly new commission.
Idea. So we're opening the meeting at 6. Oh, see how bad this is, Dan?
6 p.m. 6:02.
Okay, so. So we've had a lot of people step down on the Historic Commission, and you have all volunteered to join us, and we're thrilled. It's great to get fresh blood and energy back into the room and get some stuff done. I'm Kathleen Schofield. I think I've been with the Historic Commission for about 8 years. And then Dan, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Dan Byer. I'm the director of Parks and Rec, and I work for the Water Department, and then I'm on Historic and Historic District.
Karen Mead. I just recently retired, so I'm just looking to give back a little bit. And this history, I love it. I love it.
I love that you love it.
Debbie Bro. I work for the town of Franklin, but I've lived in Mendon since 2000, I guess. And I'm very excited to be here. Thanks.
I'm Christina Campbell. I am in my coming up final semester of law school. So lived in Mendon forever so far. So also happy to be here.
Until you move out.
I don't see that happening.
No, I know.
Very costly.
Leading dream for a lot of people. Well, welcome. I can't express how grateful we are that you all stepped up. And I mean, I think you'll enjoy learning a lot about Mendon history. And, I gave you a couple of links to start following. Yep. we won't give you a nosedive into the legal stuff, but we'll start you out with, are you familiar with the Hope 1842 website? No. It's run by Dan Byer. Dan.
No.
What?
Are you sure?
Do that too?
I have no interest in that. No, that's Mr. Malloy.
Dan Malloy, I'm sorry. So he built a website and to share the history of Hopedale, and Dick Grady and John Trainer, our local historians, have worked with him for a very long time, putting together wonderful stories about the history of Mendon. So if you want to learn a little bit about, the history, they've got some great pictures up there. I would start reading through and you can kind of get a feel for, Mendon's early beginnings. There are also some wonderful movies that John and Dick made, and they go through Mendon from its very early stages. I think they're working on the Roaring 20s right now, so hopefully we'll get there soon. They're still waiting for actors, so if you're interested in dressing the part, perhaps, and learning a few dance steps, we would love to have you sign up for that.
Do you do that?
What's that?
Are you part of that?
Of the video?
Do you dress up and?
I go with my daughter. I go to the
nice
Crane Estates only once a year, but I love it. It's fun.
That's great. Yeah.
So, we'll open the meeting. And the first we've called to order, approving the prior minutes. The only thing I had was July.
So nothing got sent out, so we probably should send it out for a future meeting to just catch us up.
Yeah, I don't think we've met since.
No.
Okay. All right.
I'll
So we will review the minutes for July and January at our next month's meeting.
Did we meet? I have two, August 2nd and September 5th. I'll go back and look at my notes.
So you think those?
Yeah, well, I think we had, because remember that was that property on Thornton Street.
Oh, yes.
I-
September.
It was September 5th and August 2nd.
Okay, all right, I'll go back and check as well. All right, so we've introduced our new members. Consider reorganization, which would be as part of the Historic Commission. We try to participate in some of the other boards. Sometimes it's required.
Before that, though, I think we need to vote, we need to appoint a chairperson.
Okay,
Because I believe Lynn was the chair and is no longer.
would that be you?
I don't mind doing it if you know, in terms of the title, but I don't have a lot of time to commit
Right.
in terms of beyond that. You know, I don't mind, you know, in name if we want to, so we have a chairperson and then go from there, but
In a worker bee. And do we know if Connie's?
I believe, I have not heard from her, so her mother passed, I don't know if you saw that.
Oh,
Yeah. So somebody should probably give her a call and
Yeah.
check in. I believe she's still interested. And I believe Janice has stepped down from both as well.
okay, all right. And I'm slowly phasing out, so, so what we want to do is try to reset the board, or the commission. We do need a secretary. We need a chairperson to run the meetings. And we would need a representative to attend, the CPC meetings, Community Preservation Committee meetings, and are there any other?
Yeah, so CPA is you right now. I just put that on here as a placeholder. Not necessarily a change needed to be made. I just, in case it was to be discussed.
Yeah,
I think really the critical thing is somebody to take meeting minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
That we really, thank God for Jane bailing us out, but we really fell behind on district.
yeah.
So I would want to get ahead of that here.
So I mean, we don't want to throw you in the fire. So I mean, obviously I will take meeting minutes and, get them out to everybody. But if you think you might be interested, just let me know. Okay. Or if you would like to be chair, if you like to run meetings, if you're, organized and you don't think that it's the morning when it's really the night, you're our person. So just, food for thought, something to kind of digest that we'll be looking to try to get us set up into different positions.
So I guess it's up to you if you want to take a vote with regards to chair.
Yeah, I mean, how do you feel about that?
I'm willing to do it
Dan
now,
is
but
the most overworked. Oh,
Yes.
wait a minute, Andrew is too.
I forgot it.
I forgot. Yeah. But but chances are he's gonna need an assist on this, so, it's always good to have a secondary person, which what
Mhm.
Lynn and I were, I was the secretary, she was the chair, and we kind of worked in unison to get, paperwork out and dates and
and
things.
there's still one more vacancy too. If someone else, I believe we're up to 7.
Yes, so
So
we
if you're aware of somebody else.
else, so
Um,
if you think of anybody,
and then I emailed the other option. So the Historic District Commission also could use some membership. I believe both members and alternates. We're pretty much down to the wire. That group, so there's historic districts in town. That group oversees just those districts and pretty much hears requests for people who want to change their properties, do exterior work. That's a pretty minimal commitment. It was similar to this. We were trying to meet once a month, and I don't even think we were doing that. But if any of you think you're interested,
I could do that.
we could send something in to the select board and have them put that on their next agenda.
Mhm.
great Karen.
Even just as alternates. So like example, Jane Lowell was a member,
Mhm.
but because she's in a butter to a lot of properties, often she has to step down. So just having an alternate that could step up.
Mhm.
And then with respect to the Community Preservation Committee, we, as, as overseers of kind of the historic aspects, have been able to access historic preservation funds. Part of the Community Preservation Act allows for a certain amount of money to go into a kitty for historic, and then others for parks and other projects, town-related projects. So it's wonderful to have those kinds of financial resources. We use them, carefully in this community, and they've gone to help, assist in, renovating some of the older buildings like the old fire station and converting it into the police station. So, excuse me. So, they meet on every other month.
Once a month, the first Tuesday. I'll send an email out, because that's another thing. It'd be good to just send out with some information you can learn about it, what it is, how it works. I believe it's the first, hang on. Yeah, the first Tuesday of the month is CPA, is when they've been trying to meet. And it's usually every month, especially closer to town meetings.
So you're looking for a liaison to.
So yeah, the CPA is made up by definition of appointed members of certain boards, parks, planning board, conservation. So one of those representatives is historic, because
Okay.
as you'll see, I'll send out the information. One of the allowable uses of those funds is for historic preservation. So basically that board's an advisory board. They make recommendations on how that money is to be spent, and then town meeting makes the final vote.
But yeah, and we can send you the dates of the upcoming meetings. So if you just want to watch, and see how the meetings go. Ann Mazar is the chairperson for that committee. But it's always, I mean, obviously they try to, get all the important input into making decisions with regards to the CPA funds.
Can I just, so for housekeeping purposes, will you all set up with a town account? Have you accessed your town account? So going forwards, I can email your town account and you'll get it. Beautiful. Then we will do that. Just so I don't have to send this out. So I think we do need to take a vote as to somebody needs to be chairperson.
All right.
So
So
I think if you want it to be me, somebody needs to make a motion.
You, as chair for the Historic Commission, do I have a second?
Second.
And then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And none
Aye.
opposed.
All right.
I don't know if it was sent out. We can send out some like basic open meeting law stuff about how, I mean, this isn't like super formal Robert's Rules of Orders or anything, but just the basic, what a quorum is.
Mhm.
I don't know if was any of that sent out or not really.
No,
I don't know what they
yet.
send to people.
Did you send it out? I mean,
No, I don't know if you got anything more.
I sent a bunch of stuff.
Ellen may have sent you
Yeah,
Yeah.
so-
At some point, there's an ethics training.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of a pain in the butt, but it is valuable. And I think in terms of this board, I think it's important, understanding where there could be a conflict, if something involved a property that you owned or abutted or somebody that you might do business with,
Right.
as a board that conducts hearings versus like say parks where, it's a little different, but
Yeah, and it's not unusual that,
It's
board
helpful.
members and across the boards,
Mhm.
occasionally run into, conflicts or what would be perceived conflicts. So they usually step aside during
Mhm.
voting time and just, let the rest of the board make the final determination.
I said that Vane was the example because she's the abutter to like everything in the historic district. So I put the annual report just on here as a placeholder. I don't mind pulling it together, but it's just going to be like a real brief paragraph. I don't know if we'll probably just send out a draft. It's technically due in a couple weeks, but we can vote on it at a future meeting. It's not a hard deadline. That's basically a report of what we did last year. So I guess it really doesn't involve you guys as much, but we need to submit something.
And I can work with you on that as well.
Yeah, that would be helpful if you have stuff. I know Lynn did it in the past.
Yeah, yeah,
I'll have to go back and look at what we did.
terrific. Yeah. me too.
And then I put, so the budget on here, so we have a budget of $3,000. I think. Is that right? 3 and 5? No, hang on. No, I think we have 3,000 and I think the district commission has just 500 for postage. So every year that budget process comes out and we have to basically submit a request, my recommendation would be to just leave it alone and do the same thing. We're not really spending it. It's there so we can, if we have to buy signage or replace a sump pump in the record room, things like that.
Yeah,
But I don't, given that we haven't spent it in the past, I don't think there's a need to ask for an increase right now.
yeah. No, I think we're good for now.
So
You're
I
always
will-
very happy when you don't ask
I
for
will
more.
submit
I know, I noticed
For
that.
everybody.
Is that something you have to spend by the end of the year? Or is it compiled?
No, well, so it's what's called the general fund, so it's an annual budget. And with the town, the fiscal year is July 1 to June 30th. So this budget will take effect on July 1, 24. Yeah, I'm just looking up our budget. Oh, of course, that's the wrong year. So it's not that we have to spend it, but we get that 3,000 each year. And then the expenses have to be things within the year, like we couldn't, if we had a bill from last May, we can no longer pay for it. For example. And I think a big part of that was like hearing notices, so we could do mailings.
Yeah, the bulk of what we
Um,
do is, we've done a lot of mailings,
The fee, so when people do demo delay, there's a fee, that's the mailing cost. That money actually goes back to the general fund
Okay.
and it kind of offsets things. I mean, that's way off topic to get into how. Oh, I'm wrong. So ours, it's 3,000 for expenses, 500 for postage. And then district has another separate 500.
okay, all right, so 3,000.
That's what it was. So like the replacement sign for Founders Park that eventually we'll put up, that was paid for out of that, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of what we need to try and do some more of is education. And I think that's probably some of what's in this other packet, but
Yeah, yep, absolutely, yep.
if there's opportunities to put up signage, do mailings, that sort of thing,
Mhm.
it's worth
And
looking into.
increasing awareness, the historic areas in town, what's significant, what's not. Well, we don't go with what's not. Mendon is a funny town. It doesn't have, it's not like driving through Milford or Uxbridge where you see these beautiful Victorians and multifamily homes and, Dutcher Street and Hopedale. A lot of it is farmland and farmhouses and stone structures and things like that. The trolley road, I don't know if you ever noticed the trolley road that's down but off of Taft Avenue, but it's where the trolley used to come in, and thankfully it's, the berm is still there and,
Really?
but nobody knows it's the old trolley road. So it's, little things here and there, because. All right, what do we have next?
I'm looking to my thing. So I think the next is why everybody's here, that discuss Taft Library detached garage building, which apparently is called the Carriage House. Not heard that before.
Come on out.
So you might as well just, make somewhere near a microphone so we pick you up. Yeah. That's the,
It doesn't bite.
this space is not great for a small group, you know.
Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good.
It was a conversation we probably should have had a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't think it was really on the radar until we started emptying it out in June
Right.
this last year.
Because we don't use it. We've
Yeah.
never used it. It was kind of this dumping ground for the materials from when they did the reno, right?
Yeah,
That was
yeah,
what was in there.
when we emptied it out, it was, materials from 2016. And then, somebody else had been storing some things in there as well. But once we emptied it out, you couldn't actually close the doors of the carriage house anymore. It was pretty warped and.
I can tell you it was like that prior to, at one point, we looked at that, we were asked to look at that as an option for storing the parks truck.
Oh.
And so that's why everything was shoved to one side, but
Yeah.
then I realized that our truck is like 3 feet too long to fit.
Yeah.
So,
But
and the roof was leaking then too,
Yeah,
It's-
yes.
sadly in very poor condition.
Has sort of caved in on the ceiling. I mean, for the most part, we didn't have any specific plans for it. I mean, certainly, we always talk about, things we could do with it, but
If it was in.
if it was viable.
Right.
Right.
But, I know that today they, did close it off and secure it, so we don't have the issue anymore,
Yeah.
which is good.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I don't know. There's a lot more we have to say about it other than,
No, it was just,
Yeah.
it was a safety concern,
Yeah,
and that was why we went
Yeah.
to the town with it.
Yeah, and I mean, had it gone through like the routine demo process, it would have been, we would have picked up on it, because it goes through the permitting process.
Yeah, so unfortunately, what happened, and Brendan actually brought this up. So I sent you out, we modified the demo delay bylaw. And the very short version is that there's now a short list of properties that are, I guess, protected for lack of a better term. We generated that list using the assessor's dates. But the library date was 2016 because that's when the library was built, the new library. And that's a very weird, unique situation where they built this new building, but left this partially historic building on the property. And as I mentioned to you, we should probably go through, and if there's any others we know, like somebody has a historic building on their property where the house is not, we might want to add those to the inventory.
Yeah. We had to do this all last year, so we were scrambling to get all the information ready so we could get to town meeting, and obviously, we actually have to make sure that the Locust Hill Cemetery is on that list, because that would be really important.
I think prior to whatever was discussed last night, I think, my thought process in putting this on the agenda was that it sounds like the intent is to demolish it. This should go through the process, hold a public hearing. I think it meets the standard, I mean, I do understand that there's a procedure for a building that's potentially hazardous that needs to come down, and I don't dispute what John has to say about it. It's in horrible condition, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. I didn't watch the meeting. I don't know how things were left last night. Assuming it's not coming down in the next 3 days, I don't see the harm in holding a hearing unless at this point,
Well, how do you feel?
I don't
mean,
know.
Do you feel like the building is secure enough that we could take a little time and figure out, how to get it off the property,
we were just talking about this.
Get what off the property?
get the building off the property?
So you'd
To
actually.
try to save it?
No.
Or-
I'm confused.
When we go through, demolition requests, what we look at is what can be salvaged. Can anything be salvaged? Can it be repurposed? 77 Park Street was the most amazing collection of beams that you will never see again, ever. And the builder was very smart to take that place apart, loaded up those beams, and I'm sure he made a small fortune off of it. So, if not a much larger fortune. So, we ask everybody to sit down and, before you go to demolish, something, is there another way that we can repurpose? Is there money that we can get that would make it a functioning structure for you? Is there, can we repurpose the materials? Can you sell off, the structure? Things like that. So, before we go to straight demo, we want people to just take a deep breath and say, okay, can it be saved? Can it be salvaged? Is it worth it? Is it, but I mean, a lot, it will depend on how you feel right now about, is it secure enough to,
I mean, I think in terms of what they did today, it's secure enough so that part of our issue was like kids wandering around. We don't want kids walking into that building. We
absolutely.
didn't want somebody else trying to store some things in there, which was the first issue.
Yeah.
So
I think it's secure enough, certainly at this point. And you can't reach the interior, and that was the point.
But that's the other point, is you won't be able to get in to look at what it looks like in there without unscrewing all of what's done today.
I think I
So my question then, I guess I'm confused. Is there an order from the building department that this building is condemned? Like a formal, whatever the process is?
I think so.
Well, I think so the building inspector.
I know he wrote that letter,
He sent the letter through advising what he felt should happen.
right?
I don't know.
I guess I'm just confused. I'm confused as to where this sits with the process and
Yeah, well,
who's,
I
I
think
mean,
that was our issue too, is like, not understanding like what, it's difficult to know what protocol is.
like
supposed to
who's,
be.
I guess who's paying, are you paying for this demo out of your budget, or you expect is the intent to go to town meeting and ask for funding to fund this?
So it's not our building.
Right. I mean,
Got it.
actually,
It has,
it's
it's the
town's.
town's building. It has nothing to do with
It's
that.
very
The,
much
the
like-
only reason why we even got involved, which we were talking about earlier, was because of the safety issue.
Right.
For when Tara does programs in the summer outside and
Yeah.
kids are running around the parking lot, or, other, people are trying to get into store stuff
Right.
that shouldn't be there. So things like that. That is the only reason why we even brought it to the town's attention. So it's, we don't have a budget for it. We don't plan to. It's not our building.
Yeah, and technically the town doesn't recognize you as the owners. You just own the library and not.
Essentially, right.
Correct.
Yeah, right, exactly. The rectory is owned by the town. That's my
Yeah,
understanding.
the rectory itself too is another whole, but that's another whole thing.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
So I get, should we be waiting for an application from the owner of said building, or my kind of thought was maybe we should just be proactive and schedule a hearing with the understanding that it's the town's intent to demolish it, but is there even a concrete plan to demolish it, or was it just a concern over the condition and now it's boarded up and it's fine to take some time and evaluate options?
In that letter, he talks about
Yeah, let me-
it either needs to be secured or taken
Okay.
down. I think
Hang on.
was his recommendation that it should be done, relatively.
Because if it's not an immediate issue, then we can take some time and, come up with a
Oh,
plan.
Brendan is-
Okay.
Oh,
Brendan has his hand up.
Brendan,
Hello, I just wanted to, because I have the letter open in front of me. I just wanted to clarify what it said. So I can't speak for the rest of the select board, but what the letter from the building inspector says is that we should consider this an official notification that the building is condemned, essentially. But speaking for myself and myself only, I think personally I have no problem going through the process.
I mean,
I
Right.
usually would take a month to go through,
Yeah.
we scheduled for next.
I mean, my thought at this point is as long as it's secured, as long as nobody can access it.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah,
our
I think we're
concern,
perfectly
yeah.
happy, with, letting the process continue.
Okay, great.
Process.
Why don't you just go ahead and do that then? We'll schedule a hearing. We'll just go through the,
Sure.
you know.
I mean, we just want to follow protocol.
Right.
Clearly, for what should be done in terms of the building, so, however that plays out.
Yeah.
It's fine with us.
I don't, I guess save it for the hearing. I don't know what options there are. I will say if it is to be moved, it would need to be moved significantly.
Yes.
Even if it goes onto the abutter's property, it's going to be in the town's best interest to ensure that anything within 100 foot of that well that can be removed is removed.
Yeah.
That's right, there's the well.
So it would not be in our interest, to pick that up and move it 30 feet to the left over the property line. It would require a variance, but that wouldn't
Is that-
solve the problem.
Is that something that's been,
I don't know. I think there's potentially I think on paper, there maybe is someone who might be interested in it. I don't know if that's cost effective or makes any sense whatsoever, but and the town would have to commit, I think the town would have to declare it surplus, go to town meeting. There's a whole process that they would have to choose to undertake if they wish to dispose of it in that manner. I don't know. Like we've had private properties where somebody has said, listen, I'll give you the house for free. You come get it. That I don't know if the town can do that. I don't know how that works.
The town.
So I don't know. But I guess if there's no plan to, hire somebody to be there tomorrow with the excavator, I think it's worth just going through the exercise. Personally, I don't see any reason to, I would not be in favor of a delay on this property, put it that way.
Yeah.
I just, unless, I just don't see any option to saving it.
Cause
But
it's space that you could maybe potentially use, in the future. So we want to make that.
right, I
we don't
think
wanna Hold anything up.
in terms of what's being looked at in the future. I don't think we have necessarily anything.
No, we
set
don't
in
have a
stone that
timeline
we
yet,
do.
right?
That building, as I said, is sat there and, really, hasn't been a lot of thought other than just make it secure.
Right.
Stuff.
I mean, you don't see that, oh, if we only had such and such amount of money, we might be able to fix it up,
right, yeah.
make use of it. But
Right.
is that not registering at all?
We
There's
had,
always
it's-
potential for you.
right, we had always thrown it around, but seeing the condition it's in, it's probably not feasible because it would cost a lot of money to
Has
make it.
there been any analysis of that structure in terms of potential asbestos?
I don't know. That's a good
Because
question.
those floor tiles are questionable to me.
Right.
Um, I mean, and that may be something too, in the short term, if the town, it may be worth having them tested so they understand, what's involved.
I forgot they were in the garage.
Um,
Of course, you didn't want to get your Model T dirty, so. So, and I don't know, have you seen the Usher bungalow?
Yeah, actually, I was gonna ask about that because you said it was a troop or something, the Usher troop?
Yeah, so it was a brother and sister, vaudeville act, and they built this,
So that was where what
Bungalow.
was on the spot where the rectory was? The
yep,
rectory is?
yep. And then, Francis Mann, who lived next door. I mean, it drew a lot of,
Yeah.
people with money, up in this area. So right next door in that house was, Francis Mann. He was from Milford. He invented the chicken deboner.
Oh.
And also he's on the lake too.
Yeah.
So,
Here, copy.
his family would perform on the lake. They were
Oh,
very
alright.
close to the Aldriches, the,
Was it like a summer house, you said?
yes, yeah. So a lot of people would come up during.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they'd have servants, through the rest of the evening. So it was known as the,
I don't know if this will work.
the Gary bungalow, which was right next door. That's the-
Yeah.
that was, I believe,
Nope. It's not gonna work.
No.
yeah.
I'm trying to do it so Brendan could see it. If you wanna pass around at least.
And I appreciate it, Dan.
I was thinking I could screen share, it, put it up on the big screen, but I don't think it's gonna work. Instead, it just made a loop.
They were a big bond.
Yeah.
Many years.
It's the-
The
second one up on the left.
lake and
This one.
Burlap.
It's the one that looks like the house that's next door.
Oh,
Be happy to share with you. But did some really cool pictures beyond the bungalow.
Is that for like
Couple pages
19
down.
teens?
Yeah.
Okay.
Of, Nipmuc Lake Park, and people that work there and, some of the entertainment that went on there. So it's, that was part of that whole chapter of Mendon's history, which actually lasted for about 100 years. So it was a very viable source of income for the community.
So how many actually lived in that?
In the Usher bungalow,
Yeah.
I would like guessing, I would guess that it was Fanny and her brothers, parents,
Okay.
cousins. I
Oh,
don't
yeah,
know
that's very
how
similar.
They had. The
Huh.
Manns plus the in-laws were there.
Yeah.
So it was multi-family, and there was actually a third cottage.
Oh, there was?
So, yeah,
Oh.
so.
So if we, just because it's kind of related, if we skip way ahead on one of the things on the agenda was consider next meeting date. So I think one of the things would be to try and find a regular date that works. The tentative date we've been using is the fourth Monday at 7, and then the district meets at 6. I only bring it up because that could be the potential hearing date,
Oh, what date is that? I'm sorry.
would be Monday, the 22nd, assuming that date works for people. I don't know what
Works for
y'all
me.
availability is.
I won't be able to be in person, but I can
Okay.
sign in. I just have like a night class Monday nights. So,
Well, we could do a different night.
This is.
yeah, I mean, like, don't change it
Yeah.
just on my
Yeah.
account, but
Um, I don't know if there's a day of the week that works. I know I can't do Wednesdays.
Wednesday's
Starting
the only
here.
night that's really bad.
This is
Oh,
the
good.
family reunion.
Yeah, I have another night class Wednesday night. So that's good too.
I think they.
We could, I mean, we could do that. I don't know what Kathy is. We could do the Tuesday.
This was the
I know
play.
previously we had thrown out the 16th, but that's too early now.
Voting.
But maybe we
Uh,
just think we could kill two birds with a stone and pick a
So it
regular
really
date.
is
Cause
about
that's one of the, it's nice when, to be able to have just a set date,
Mm-hmm.
not have to think about it.
You know, industry
Um,
and people would come out here.
I know every other third, the select board and board of health are on Wednesdays, Concom's every other Thursday, plannings,
Kind of
the
neat.
first
A lot
and
of people
third
don't know
Monday.
that any of this exists.
Right.
Um,
How about Tuesday night?
Tuesdays are usually
Yeah,
good.
they'd have
I can't
fireworks
do
every weekend. Deal.
second or the third. Unless we meet at
And we do have a couple of pictures.
earlier.
I'm open.
Yeah.
so-
Second or the third, like Tuesday?
So like the second Tuesday of the month,
Yeah.
I have a meeting at 7,
Okay.
so we could meet at 6. We just sometimes run into trouble if we have a long hearing.
Okay, catch me up.
See, we're talking about meeting dates. I don't know if there's a day of the week that works for you.
We'll just wing whatever.
If we wanted to try Tuesdays. 1, 2, 3. Oh, I think the brothers are the 4th Tuesday. The Lake Task Force is the 3rd Tuesday at 7. So if we wanted, I mean, if we want to do a 6 o'clock meeting,
On a Tuesday.
but if, yeah. So if we did, I mean, unfortunately, in terms of this hearing, we've got to be a minimum of 2 weeks out. So. We probably would want to set that sometime the end of January and then look at a regular meeting date. Could we try for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Is a Thursday the 25th work?
For me.
It would conflict with conservation if anybody needs to be at both, but we can find other space to meet.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, that works.
25th of January.
25th, and then I will submit an application on behalf of the town for the record room or the whatever it is, carriage house. With the intent to schedule a public hearing, we'll send out the notices.
Okay, so we'll just go through.
So on the 25th, you said?
Yeah, if that date works, it would probably be, I think we would just say at 7 then.
So we don't need to necessarily speak to it. It's just,
Just a public.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I assume there's at least one abutter who will probably come and maybe others have thoughts.
And I think, in terms of, a demo plan, what would the demo plan be? Who would, excuse me, we need to iron out.
I don't think,
Or demolishing it, where will the materials go? Because that's all part of the building department will require that as well. To make sure all the materials go safely disposed of.
I don't think, I mean, that's not within our purview though.
Yeah, but is that a conversation they can have with the building department?
Yeah, I mean,
But is that?
I would be shocked if there's a proposal to actually demolish this building
It's
put forward anytime in the next 6 months that way. I don't,
The last,
I mean, my recommendation is that somebody needs to, if the intent is to demolish this building, somebody needs to call up some contractors, get some pricing and figure out how it's going to be paid for. And maybe that's David.
Yeah,
Launch.
it would be someone from the
Yeah.
the town.
Because I would put that on the
not from
warrant in May
library, Say.
and request funding.
all right, do you want me to email
Um,
him and just ask him if he can,
I don't know. I think, I mean, because, so the change to the demo delay bylaw, basically, what we're determining is whether or not this property is significant and worthy of a delay. Once we make that determination, it's off our list, out of our hands. So it really doesn't matter what gets done with it from that point forward. That's up to the building department and the actual demolition permit. They're going to deal with that side of it. I think our discussion point is, does it meet those 4 characteristics? And if
Right.
yes, is it worthy of, putting a delay on it? And at least then we can say we did follow the process.
yeah,
I mean, I don't know. I go back and forth. Personally, I don't see myself being in favor of any delay, but if it's not coming down tomorrow, then I do think it's worth the exercise to post the hearing.
yeah. And I think as long as you don't feel that there's an immediate need, and if that changes, then we go to, we go to just.
But Don has the legal authority to tear it down tomorrow if it's a hazard, so, and that's certainly his right.
Right, so that's up to them. I mean,
Yeah.
our immediate need was make it secure and they did that, so.
Yeah.
Right.
It's now, I believe, in their hands.
This
So-
hearing is a hybrid thing, so we do.
It would be, yeah, at this point, pretty much all meetings are hybrid unless occasionally we did full remote. I would ask, please let me know, because I don't want to be the only one coming here if nobody's gonna come. That happened a few times.
See, we like to tell them we're gonna be here and then nobody shows up. Did anybody tell us?
Because usually Lynn would come, but,
Do you
all
have any
right.
questions for us? Or any concerns or anything else?
No, I mean, I think like we said initially, the fact that it's, not accessible is the big thing for us at the moment. And then, like I said, the other thing is that we just want to make sure the process is followed.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate
Yeah.
working with us, and I know it can be a little bit of a drag.
No,
Yeah, and then
we didn't know what the process was.
right,
Really, it
Right.
was more of, we have this issue, went to the select board, and they kind of guided us from there.
The our overriding concern is safety.
Yeah. Well, if anything comes up, you know how to get in touch. with me,
absolutely.
so. Otherwise,
I think Dan's on speed dial for everyone.
Yeah. Everyone.
Everyone, not
yeah,
just us.
Oh, yeah, flip back a couple pages this way. so-
and we should go through and review if there's other properties where there's a new building and some historic.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I've actually got.
And others that fell through the cracks. And I think we'd have to pursue the process to formally, so there's a process to formally add, I don't know if you read that website.
Set a tree.
It's like a whole mechanism to formally put them on the list.
excuse me,
Because the idea was, as things age, you might say, all right, this. This is.
working on,
But I think that was kind of the issue, was that there was previously the demo delay, it applied to everybody.
Is there anything that
So like if you wanted to tear down your brand new shed you built last year, you still have to have a public hearing and go through all the rigmarole. Versus making it a curated list where we're saying, these are the properties that are worthy of
Right,
us, investing our energy into trying to preserve them,
right.
and it's unfortunate, by the time they come to us, there's not a whole lot we can do, but sometimes, like Misco Springs, sometimes there's an opportunity where the developer steps back and says, hey, maybe there is something to be done here.
So, in there's a bunch of really good virtual workshops that you can check out. And of course, one of them is Pathway to Enable More Building Material Reuse in Deconstruction in Massachusetts. So I would, if you want to kind of get an understanding of what communities are doing to reuse or deconstruct some of these materials, their older buildings, I think it would be a really great workshop to,
Yeah. Do they record any of these things?
oh, they do.
Oh,
They
great.
do.
Okay.
But what you have to do is you have to register. So they'll send you the link. And then if
Okay.
you want to watch it later, you just go back and pick it up. So that is a great workshop.
Yeah, I'll email her because I think we got to submit like a revised roster of our
Yeah. So
commission.
Jen Doherty is
And
the
you'll get these
Historic
emails.
Commission representative. She oversees about everything. She works with all the commissions. She's a very valuable resource. I mean, at times we've had to, call her up. It was Chris Skelly before. She took over, but she's a great resource, and she's great at answering questions and kind of rifling through some of the more difficult issues that towns are having. But she also makes sure that there's all kinds of really good workshops that you can watch virtually and participate in. So that being said, they are holding the Eastern Mass Historic Commission Coalition on Tuesday, February 6th. And that is also, you just connect through registering. And it's gaining insight into safeguarding our region's historic resources from demolition at the upcoming EMHCC meeting. It's essential for anyone involved in heritage conservation and promises a valuable and informative experience. And they talk about understanding the demolition delay implementation process. We could sit here and tell you all about it, but you'd go to sleep. So, so it's a lot, sometimes it's a lot easier to listen to, a group of people discuss how the process works.
Mhm.
And then we can narrow it down to, this applies to us, this doesn't apply to us. But for the most part, we all kind of follow the same, process. So, and again, a lot of these presenters are awesome. They're great to listen to, and it kind of helps you understand a little bit more about, some of the things that we are charged with on the commission.
Mhm.
And then the other one is, Jane Lowell set me up to get on what they call the Mass List Serve. And the Mass List Serve, Karen, you in particular might want to get on and start reading. Use your town email
Mhm.
as the recipient. And what will happen is that they discuss a bunch of topics. And a lot of people are advising each other, like we have this stone structure and, the town wants to tear it down. Do you have any recommendations? Or do you know anybody that does window restoration? And a lot of these people with a lot of experience will chime in and say, oh yeah, give so-and-so a call. Or this is what we did in our town. Or, it
Nice.
is a great, resource. They do a lot of historic district, conflicts that come up, like, how do you address solar in a historic district? Or,
That's a good
mini
question.
splits, some towns are very strict about, whether or not you see, an air conditioning unit from the front of the house, and other towns just
Mhm.
don't make it's not that big a deal. So, but these are great resources
Yeah.
to start with. And I mean, literally all I did was start reading them. And then all of a sudden we would get issues, and then I would go back and wait. On the list. Wait, I found it. So. So there's your homework.
Okay.
And then Dan will update all of our commission information and share it with Jen Doherty, so she knows to put you on the mailing list.
Oh, okay, great.
I'll double check. I thought that stuff might go to the town group list already, but
Possibly. Yeah.
So I put the next one on our agenda is 153 Hartford Ave East. So this is a request. So as part of the demolition, we talked about it briefly when we started. Part of the new update to the bylaw is there's a process to request basically a free hearing once a year. Just
Right.
say, anytime you can spend money and request a hearing, but once a year we would offer an opportunity just that people could request their inclusion or removal from the list to be reconsidered.
Mhm.
This actually came through last year during the process, but it came through after we had done everything. So we had pushed it to this year. It's a house that was constructed in 1930, so it's been put on the list. The complication is he's selling the house. And at the time that the request came through, we did not have a quorum. So now the earliest we can schedule a hearing, he would technically no longer be the owner, and it would be up to the new owner to apply. So I don't know if we want to wait and just schedule a hearing or see if the new owner is looking to pursue it. I mean, unless they're intending to demolish the house, which I don't believe they are, it really doesn't change anything. It just says if you want to demolish the house, it requires review.
Mhm.
I think they may be interested in rebuilding the garage, is maybe what started this. But anyway, so that's why I put that on there. So I don't know now. I only know this in the water department, but the closing the next week. So
Oh, are they?
yeah. If we get to do a final reading.
Normally, under normal circumstances, as part of the routine, do we have any other problems?
There were no other requests that came through. I mean, it did kind of come through last year, so it is, I mean, maybe we kind of owe it to see this one through and
Right.
instead of,
Should we just do some outreach and give them
You
a
know,
call and see if
part of my
that's-
thought was
may not be of any concern?
we're already gonna spend the money. I could follow up with the new owner. I believe I have his info and just see if he's looking to pursue this or he wants to wait. It's Derek Kurz is the current owner, if you know him.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yes, so why don't we do that and just, see if this is something they want to pursue, or should we just table it till next year?
But if he does, I'd rather do it on the 25th at the same time
Mhm.
and save our money in terms of mailings and hearing notices.
Yeah.
Although these are pretty far apart, so there's no overlap, but
No, I think that's a good idea. So are you going to contact him?
I can reach out and
Okay,
confirm with the new owner. Oh, and I guess this was on here twice about community preservation.
apparently,
So if it's just you for now, then no change.
for now.
Yeah.
I mean, I plan to stay on for a little bit longer, but would love to pass the torch to somebody who's, who has an interest in, seeing how CPA funding works and, it's great. I mean,
Well, I think there's definitely a need to make sure that whoever the person is that can commit to it.
When did you say they meet?
They meet the first Monday, no, the first Tuesday of the month.
First Tuesday.
But they're not meeting in January, and I'm pretty sure the February meeting got pushed to a different date, the 12th, which is a Monday. From what I believe Ann sent out. I'll send an email with an overview of what they do and what CPA is. I mean, it's a good resource of funding that's available for preservation of historic things. I mean, it's really, other than the grant, that's what's paying for this record room project.
right. So
That's
they
what-
helped us, get the funds together to get an engineer to look at the records room on Main Street and get the process rolling so we could get into a grant cycle to get funding to fix the building. They provide money for parks projects. And some of that money has assisted Dan in getting additional grants as well. What other things? Purchasing of open space. For the, we just
Paddock.
entered into an agreement with Metacomet Land Trust to purchase some land at the Vandersloot property, Maple Farm Sanctuary on
Yes,
North
yeah.
Ave.
Well,
you-
conservation restriction.
Oh, conservation restriction,
right.
yeah.
Oh.
So, it goes towards a lot of good things in the town. And again, the, police station, fire station project was,
Yeah, so like that, the portion of that was renovating the historic station, they were able to take advantage of CPA funds. And it's nice, so like from the road, you kind of still see those 3 bays.
we have a lot of very busy people that write a lot of grants for this community. And I don't know if you remember, I'm sure Karen, you can say, if you drove down here 5 years ago, this place was a mess. And look where it is now. And that has been just a full-on effort, by so many boards and so many people and so many volunteers to bring it to where it is now. And, we're very grateful for all of those people who've jumped in. And, it involves everybody. It's historic, it's police, it's fire, it's, everybody just jumps in, community preservation and, and it's amazing what we can do. We had Mass Historic down here looking at the records room, and the gentleman that was here had given us grant money to evaluate this whole campus area, which started the ball rolling to make the improvements and, kind of push these projects along. And he was so smitten. He was out here taking picture after picture. He was just glowing. But, and of course they want to see that their money is well spent. As I promise you, it will be well spent. And we have a lot of people that make sure it happens. So,
But yeah, and I think the one project that at some point, probably this commission will need to push a little bit was to come back and look at the windows of this building. That was something we started looking into it, right around when Kim left. And then with all that there, it just didn't, I think we have money for the study. Because we met, you were there, right? We met with that, she found that architect.
Yep.
And then I don't think we ever, like, that was it. We never followed up or heard, sat down with them again.
right.
But I mean, assuming that, if they were still interested to kind of bring that to fruition, but
Yeah.
At this point, I think we should probably wait. I wouldn't try and push that through right now. I think we got
Yeah,
enough to
yeah,
get
no,
caught
I
up on
think-
first, but unfortunately, I don't think there's anybody really looking after some of the facility things. So when it comes to some of that, in some cases that gets dumped on historic to try and advocate for some of those things.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, years ago, somebody took out all the
Nice windows.
nice windows and
Ugh.
put garbage in. Yeah, you have to go walk through downstairs. I mean, it's the fact that they just covered up all that with drop ceiling, and because that's what you did in the 70s.
Mhm.
So at least it's nice to bring some of that back. And the
Window,
floor.
yeah. And that was a major undertaking, getting all that off the hardwood floors, because historically, this used to be the schoolhouse. The kids would come up, there was a staircase that went up into this area, and the kids would go to school here.
Mhm.
There was a performance troupe that came in and built the stage as part of a contribution. Silas Dudley actually was the catalyst for donating the land, having the building built, and then sharing the building with the town until the town eventually took over. I think it was about, what was it, 1840 to 1898?
I don't know that date. It was I think it was pretty early.
These old dates. Wasn't me. Anyways.
It's 1840 was when it was built, but
Yeah,
it was shared. He owned the top floor, we owned the main floor, and then we bought it all out.
yeah. So, I mean, there was a chimney, there were wood burning stoves, that heated the schoolroom, and there's some really great stories about, going to school here and mischievous students, and I'll have to share those with you. Wendell Williams wrote them back in the 1950s, and he recalls when, what it was like to be at school here, and kind of the terrors that they were with the teachers. So good stories. And then, it's nice to kind of get a feel for, this was the schoolhouse, and all the kids would break and go over to the block, which was, Steer and Barnes store. They buy their things, and, all the guys would be in there next to, around the wood stove talking politics, and, so this was the hub. So it's nice to have saved the hub,
Yeah. Yeah.
So many stories, but you'll pick up a lot of that on the 1842 website. Just kind of get a
can't
sense
wait.
for what these older buildings are and what their significance is. And, like very few people ever knew about the Usher Bungalow and,
Yeah.
and the vaudeville entertainment in town. So.
Never heard that before.
So that 1842 was not just Hopedale?
He started as Hopedale because
Yeah.
that's his connection.
Mm-hmm.
He's related to, his wife is Pond, right?
Yeah.
And they were neighbors to Norman's parents, so that's the connection.
Yes.
Yeah. But then I think he started posting Dick Grady's Mendon stuff on there. So now it's like a repository, and there's some Milford stuff.
Nice.
It's just it's a good collection of all the like stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good resource.
Yeah, it is a great resource. If I'm ever stuck, I always go to Hope 1842, and then I get reading, and then I lose about an hour's worth of time. I get into these stories. Oh yeah. All right, so Dan, you're going to connect with 153.
Yeah, I'll check with
at
him.
least. Deb, you want to jump in on the next CPC meeting and see
Sure.
how it goes?
Yeah.
All right.
And we're pretty sure that's February 12th, right?
It's the 12th, yeah.
Okay.
That's that.
At 7.
Yeah.
Probably here. Or maybe not if it conflicts with planning board, but we'll figure that out. And then I put,
Be posted, right?
yeah,
So our last discussion is the records room. Have any of you been in the records?
No, I want to go in the records room now.
you, I don't know.
Bring your galoshes.
Have you, I haven't, I've been afraid. I didn't go look. How bad was the basement?
I don't know. I'm gonna go up there this weekend because we have some block work to do, so I will take a peek.
We'll
I'll
let,
look at
I mean, at this point, we'll let the project deal with it, but basically we're in the process of, we've been awarded a grant to basically stabilize the building.
Mhm.
It's got massive, it's a rubble stone foundation. It's completely underwater. The floor is buckling. There was wet powder post beetles that ate out the support beams. It's very old and it's just been sitting unused. At one point that was the town's offices. This was the police station. And I think this up here was like a function room. Well, I think into the 80s and 70s, 80s at least, until they did the work and put in these offices. Mike Morley was telling me it was all one room downstairs.
Yeah.
Because the scouts used to meet there.
Yep.
And like the record room was where they had meetings and had like actual town records.
Wow.
Which is interesting because there's no utilities, so I assume they just, well, it was, that was, what's her name,
They
Coleman,
were
right?
next door
Yeah.
to 15 Main Street to use the facilities, which wasn't unusual at the
Right.
time.
So all
Shared
the,
out house.
the historical stuff, it was all the societies. The Historic Society kind of was the caretaker of that building in the museum. So they've now moved to their new location on 15 Hastings Street.
Mhm.
And then those buildings are back in the town's possession. So the goal here, I mean, I think there was a bigger project to try and figure out future ADA access, a septic design, a water supply that, perhaps you could put this to use, rent it out, do something. Unfortunately, I think so the grant won't pay for a lot of that. So I think
Yeah.
right now it's just stabilize the building so it stops deteriorating.
Mhm.
So that's where we're at. I don't know if you saw, there was an email that just came out today about a meeting.
On Monday.
Yes,
Yeah.
with the two architects
Yeah.
and David.
Excellent. Excellent.
We have an architect, and this particular grant, they are very, very particular. And we've been going back and forth, revision after revision. And so we're now actually partnering with a second firm to help push this across the finish line. And I believe when I talked to David on Friday, the goal is to finalize this, go out to bid, award a contract, because this work has to be done by June 30th.
Mhm.
So
Wow.
we're cutting it close.
Yeah.
We are cutting it close. And it's just been, a lot of, things, unexpected issues coming up, that kind of tripped this we're
Okay.
very grateful that Mass Historic, selected us as part of, the grant process, but, they absolutely are very, stringent about what they want you to do, how they want you to do it, and, meeting all their criteria. And, we've scrambled because, it took us 2 years to find an architect that would agree to do it.
Mhm.
Because it's such a small building, most of the companies had no interest in it. There isn't a big enough profit margin to repair this tiny little building. So, and on top of that, all of those buildings on Main Street have issues with water in the basement. So they're always pumping water out.
Oh.
And, this could be, something that, the church does. The museum, the old museum has
I actually didn't look. It does get wet. I haven't looked recently. At least it's higher up, but I
What's
think
in
it's
the old museum now.
Christmas lights.
That's
That's the
We
storage.
found storage.
That's the storage for all the Christmas lights and so the one thing left in there is the weights and measures. At some point, again, that would be, we go CPA and request some funds to hire a professional mover. Those should really come back in this building and be put on display.
Yeah.
I think we need to wait for all the construction to settle and decisions to be made about what goes where, but
Yeah.
that's the one thing left historic that needs to go somewhere.
Yeah. So all of those buildings, all of those residences, and they're all in, 1800s and, all have fieldstone foundations, they're, it's a lot of work for historic homeowners to stay on top of things
Mhm.
because, you know, it just, they're just more vulnerable. The structures are more vulnerable than, you know, other structures. So those in particular, you know, all have challenges. So, you know, in the record room, of course, is one of them. And so if we can just keep it standing, that's great potential.
It's a cool building. We'll have
It's a
to
cool building, you know.
people around sometime. We can go over there.
We will, we'll do some field trips.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Certainly, if you have any sort of respiratory asthma type things, I
No.
would enter at your own risk. Put it that way. It's definitely moldy,
Maybe
mildewy.
downstairs will be open by then.
I would not go in the basement.
We also oversee the Only Cook Shop, which
Yeah.
is down on Hartford Ave East.
Yes.
Um, that is, right now that it is full of antique historic items that came out of Mila Thayer's house
Really?
at 35 Cape Road. Yeah. So farming, you know,
Mhm.
instruments and other things that, it really was rather fascinating because, even though the house had been cleaned out, you know, and whatever was, you know, sellable was, you know, sold.
Mhm.
And, but Mila was a big history buff and she spent a lot of time on the historic society and donating things. In fact, she's donated to a bunch of different towns. We just found out in Bellingham that she donated her school tablet to the Bellingham Historical Society. So they are looking to get it back to us, which I think is really
Oh, that's
fantastic.
nice.
But it's got, there's just so much stuff in that building that eventually we would like to display. So, but it's, you know, all we did was clean out what we could. The owner was very generous in letting us take, you know, items that we thought were historically significant. And so we, you know, they're just kind of sitting down there and, it's a cool little shop. Um, and, you know, hopefully someday we can get, you know, people, you know, the doors open and people in and out of there to see some of the
That'd be
artifacts that were
great.
left behind. So, and in her honor, she really, she did a great job saving things. And her family goes back to, I believe, the first settlement in Mendon. So,
Wow.
yeah, Ferdinando,
The water record said Miss Mila Thayer on it.
yes,
Very particular.
yes, she was. She was a very proper woman.
So I'm glad you mentioned that because that reminded me. So there was an item that came out. So generally with meetings, things have to be posted on an agenda 48 hours in advance, and you're not supposed to. You can't talk about things that weren't on the agenda unless it's a new item that came up,
Okay.
which we do have in this case. So the Mila Thayer property, which is 35 Cape Road, previously had been before the commission. And I found the date, it was in 2020. They came for demolition delay hearing. At the time, the commission found that it was not significant or was no need to enact a delay. And at the time, I think they asked for permission to photograph, and I think that's how you came to retrieve all of the historic artifacts that Marcus donated. So there was a proposed development there that has fallen through. There's now a new developer interested, and I thought he was going to attend. So the question now at this point is whether it requires another hearing.
Mhm.
So this is another complicated gray area. So the old demolition delay bylaw didn't really have a lot of clear timelines on things. And that was one of our frustrations is they'd come before the board, get demolition delay approval, and then do nothing. You know, with no intent to demolish it, or then the whole project would change. And it's like, well, there could have been an opportunity to discuss something. The new bylaw, the way it works is the terminations are valid for 2 years. And then after 2 years, it starts over.
Oh.
So the idea was to give somebody a reasonable amount of time, to say, okay, fine, if that's what you're going to do, but have a concrete plan. Because what seems to happen is they get approval, they tear down a property, and then we're left with a vacant lighted lot and nothing ever gets built.
Right.
And what was that was a perfectly viable house that, perhaps could have been occupied or used, and maybe it eventually would have come down, but
Where is that property? On the corner? or-
There's this one in particular, you know, the fork where Bates is?
Yeah.
This is the white farmhouse that's all over going to the
Oh,
right,
okay,
if you're going
yeah,
on to Bates. It's the, formerly was all the land that was the soccer fields that has been split
Mhm.
off. So I think the question for this commission is if we feel that we should schedule another hearing on this property to consider the proposed demolition, or if the previous decision should just be upheld.
Yeah.
It's Lonnie Tinio is the applicant, so he said he didn't care either way, was happy to answer questions, whatever they needed, but you know, again, at this point, I don't know
Should we just go ahead and schedule
what's
it
left. I
along
mean,
with the library?
if we
and
want to do, if we're already doing hearings on the 25th, it might be worth doing it. You know, I don't remember the history. I think the interior has been renovated. I think it's in pretty rough shape at this point.
Yeah, when.
It was an
when we
option to
first
move it
entered-
and that fell through.
First entered the property, had it been tended to. There were a bunch of different proposals on the table. The owner was gonna move it onto Edwards Road, fix it up and occupy it. It's a gorgeous house. But since then, you know, people have been in, they've stripped out the wood floors, they've taken all, I mean, they literally trashed the place, so, which is unfortunate because, you know, it just,
When I do recall at our meeting, there was discussion about trying to preserve aspects of the building, like the granite pillars.
yeah.
And so that may at least be a conversation to have is, you know, if it has to go, can we try and, you know, reuse some elements of
Right, right.
that property?
And there's a really, I mean, she was quite the gardener, so the landscaping on the property, she's got a holly that's gonna be at least, I don't know, 60, 70 years old. It's pretty spectacular and her rhododendrons. Like that's, I love plants, so I can't, that's what I focus on. But beautiful cut stone, you know, in the, for the, that were the foundation of the old barn, and the shed has been slowly kind of peeled away at, and it has chestnut beams and, you know, but over time, people have just kind of looted it and just, you know, gone through some stuff and, you know, taken it apart. So I think, you know, it's hard, you know, for as much as we try to do, you know, you really have to have a level playing ground, and you need people who are interested, you know, in saving, you know, history or working with you, and we generally don't win that battle. You know, and it's difficult because we've seen a lot of really beautiful places come down, and although they don't look like spectacular, you know, places on the outside, some of the interior work is just stunning. So
Yeah, I think that, I mean, that's the challenge with it, especially in this town where you just have these random historic properties mixed in the middle of commercial development, new
Exactly.
development.
It's not a district.
We've never had real concrete commercial zones and it's kind of a mess. I mean, I think that's where historic district comes in. And I think that's been helpful. So now that this center area is designated, and the lower part of Washington Street, and again, more work for this commission. At some point, I think there should be a push to try and look at North Avenue, which is part of a federal district already, where there's a large number of very historic houses.
Yeah.
But it's just an astronomical amount of work to pull it all together and
yeah,
propose what needs
Now, do the
to.
homeowners want to be historic, or are you getting any pushback on?
I don't know if we've really started the formal outreach on
Mhm.
North Ave to, you know, be able to, you know, I think certainly some do, like, what's her name? Annie is in that
Oh, Andy,
Tory
yeah.
house. She's up
Mhm.
there. It's like, you know, I'm sure they're in favor of it,
oh
but
yeah.
Yeah.
And Sean Clifton, his house is across the street there.
you know, I that's right. I'd be really interested in his thoughts
Yeah.
on a historic district or somebody of that perspective.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and the
'Cause it's
interior
not-
fabric of that house is
You
very.
know, the district
historic.
doesn't affect what you can do in the inside, and our district is pretty basic. We don't care what color you paint it. We don't regulate the
Right.
roofs. We basically said we're not going to regulate solar.
Mhm.
the goal was really just to try and maintain some level of character of these houses, that, you weren't just going to tear it down and put up a sheet metal building or vinyl siding. And but definitely that.
There is a group of the historic society, and they've actually been working on the research for the North Ave Historic District. So basically what they do is they go house by house and they look at the deeds and they do the research on the properties and who they're connected with, and establishing why the properties are of historic significance and why as a whole they are it's a historically significant area, and it's considered the rural historic district, the North Ave Rural Historic District, where all of the major farms, existed, which is why we still have a lot of open space up there. So, and I think a lot, there's a schoolhouse up there, there's a cemetery, there's, all kinds of interesting little pieces and parts. Down on Hopedale Street, there's an old house and an old barn where they used to have barn dances every Saturday. So it's amazing what you can learn from interviews and talking to people.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I would think for the most part, a lot of those homeowners have spent the money and invested in their properties to improve them and not knock them down. So I think that that's a good sign that a lot of those people are, happy with keeping, the fabric of that street, intact.
Even that meeting we had with, I think it was with this group, with John Nennard, about what they were looking to do. Even I think they were okay with, the idea that they could build something that would fit the district, that, you're not, like, new construction should be different than the historic houses, and still fit the character, but, it's not like on the Cape where you have to use the same exact type of siding and one of those things. So I think it's possible to have, like, coexist.
Yep.
Which I think is part of the issue, is educating people of what it really is and what it isn't.
Right.
But just to, because it would be a shame to, like, lose one of these buildings in favor of, some modern new commercial whatever, when, they're still perfectly viable.
Yeah.
And you could just as easily renovate them and do what you want.
Yeah. Do we have any more topics we need to cover?
I believe that's it. So I'll post the hearings for the 25th. I'll get the notices out. I did just text Lonnie to just double check if he's available for that date.
And at our next meeting, we'll talk about what the status of the record, where we are with the architects, and whether or not this has all gone out to bid. And, when we can expect to get some, the work, cutting of the ground up there, which we don't expect until the spring, once the snow melts and we're done pumping all the water out of the basement. But yeah, I mean, that is a project that you can kind of watch as it rolls along, and, it's always good to have extra eyes on these projects. I stopped in and I took a look around, and this is going on, or, that's been done. And so, yeah, you pretend you're like the supervisor. And we'll schedule some fun field trips.
I love that.
And then we'll do the dirty work. Yeah.
Yep.
It's always that stuff. Do you have any questions for us?
Not at the
Well,
moment.
feel free to email us.
Okay.
Dan's generally very available via email, unless he's raking.
We do need to be careful. We can't deliberate over an email. And that's something we have run up against sometimes. We got to be very careful that if we send something out, you could just reply individually with there's comments, and one person could collect the feedback.
Right.
So, like, if I sent out the draft report, and then you could come back and say, okay, here's all the comments everybody submitted. But we generally can't, like, discuss something other than scheduling a meeting.
Right.
Email. That's a good, just general open meeting law kind of a thing.
So yeah, definitely go over the open meeting law information, just so you're comfortable with,
Yeah.
how we can communicate,
And I think just so that the website, the email on the website is a group email. So you'll probably get copies of that. That historical@minnesota.gov goes to everybody.
Okay.
Don't, I mean, it's up to you. I see that stuff and reply if it's something, we get a lot of where people email asking questions about the process. But just if you see emails coming in, generally, like if I reply, I would try to CC the board just to say this is what was sent out. There is a phone number that just goes right to voicemail, but that way people can call because some people prefer that. And then we get those voicemails.
you're left.
I am.
The inventory that you have, what's the, when you originally put it together?
So it was every property older than 1950. Because this,
You do update it.
yeah, so the way it works, we made the initial, so the bylaw is technically 75 years or older. So we used 1950, which is a little bit more than 70, or younger than 75 years, just to avoid confusion. The assessor's records are not always perfect. So now going forwards, to add properties, we have to hold that same public hearing, notify the owner. We can't, I mean, we could do it, but they have an opportunity to speak. But that was the idea, is that now going forwards, we would be curating properties that should be added to the list. I don't personally know of any at this point, but I think there could be some that are right on the edge.
And we have a master list, correct?
Yes, it's linked on the website.
Okay. So if you check the website, you can get a printout of
I
those.
did see it.
Yeah.
Oh, good, okay.
Yeah.
So there are two other things, websites that you can check out. Preservation Mendon.
Okay.
And on Preservation Mendon, we have Patrice Doucette, who has been working for years doing deed searches. And she posts them all the deed searches that she's completed are posted there. And it's been a huge help for us when we need to go to, look at a demolition permit and say, okay, well, how old is the house? Who owned it? So if you need to find the deed search, it's usually on Preservation Mendon. And if it's not, all you have to do is call Patrice and say, can you do this for me? She's very good at it. She's very efficient. So, and we're very thankful for all the work that she's done. The other website is Macris.
Okay.
So, MACRIS, and that stands for Massachusetts. No.
I'll look it up. Doesn't even tell you. Massachusetts Historical Commission, no, Massachusetts Cultural Resource Information System. And that it's a funky website. So they're like, when you first go to it, there's this real tiny acknowledgement you have to do, and it won't let you do anything. It's a weird state database website. But that contains all those, I think they look to the local commissions to send in submissions. So that's how some of these old, not formal local districts, but just districts that are designated as collections of historic properties. There's a lot of really great information in there.
Yeah. And a lot of that information was done. The town received grant funding in 1989 to survey, I think it was a total of 298 properties. So the state came in and did the inventories. Every year they offer grant money. We had an overall kind of a generic survey done, and that included this historic district, the North Avenue district, and the Washington Street district. So, but there are a lot of outliers. There are a lot of, neighborhoods, and of course, Nipmuc, like, nobody's, I think, ever inventoried what's down there, what's left down there. So, and, clearly that there's some history down there. So, you can apply for a grant to have them come out and say, okay, we'd like you to do this area. And, we would just be piecemealing it at this point, we'd just be trying to touch the outskirts of the community. So, they're a great website. Go in and, look at Mendon and it will give you their research history on the properties that they did. It's not always 100% accurate, but it's usually in the ballpark. So I think it all depends.
I know we found some weirdness in the Washington Street one.
Yeah, I'm sure we did. And then we also have, there is a cemetery group that's working on gathering all the cemetery information. So the old cemetery has been inventoried by the state. And I don't think that information is on their website. I'm trying to think of where that
I have yet
is
to
it posted.
find any of that. I mean, that's,
Ask your mother.
yeah, so I have some of the database that came from that whole fiasco years ago, which there's data, but it's not great. There's assumptions and mistakes.
Yeah.
I mean, that was one of the things and I just haven't had any time to try and work on was to create a website that just housed all of the different bits and pieces and tidbits of all the cemeteries.
Yeah. So, yeah, we're still working on getting.
And that was a project this group had started too, was trying to come, groups to clean stones and perhaps create. So if you're not familiar, Ann Mazar created this land steward program where all the open space properties in town have like a so-called steward, and usually it's somebody who lives nearby, and they just, yeah. So they just keep an eye on things, hey, a tree fell down, or like sometimes they've organized cleanups or like the Inman Pond, pulling all the weeds. So the idea was to do something similar with the cemeteries, to just have eyes out because there's so many of them, and there's another massive backlog of maintenance and project work. I mean, there's the Bicknell Cemetery, the wall, the tree work. We're fortunate to do some tree work, and there's still some money available. But I think that's another program that would be nice to, in the spring, look into trying to get. And I think there's people interested.
Is the wall tipping over?
Yeah, it's in rough shape. And
I go by it every day.
yeah. Well, you notice there's a piece on the ground,
Yeah,
and so like I don't know. Did you know Eric Peterson?
I know who he is.
He was a local. He was a
Yeah.
landscape guy. So
Yeah.
he looked at it and basically said, "This thing scares me." And so when a professional tells you that, then you're like, "Okay, this is a big job."
Yeah.
So we have the money, and we had a quote,
We did.
and we got to call them again. I think they're just very busy, and it's an ugly job but Braza was interested, but we should.
And it's very unusual to see pieces of granite that large.
big,
So, the pins that hold them all in place, have eroded. There's been, because of the water issues, a lot of it rinses out, all the stability underneath. People have gone in with concrete and tried to, patch it up. So we're trying to get it done the right way, but it's a tricky job.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
We have giant granite steps on the side of our house, and all the mortar was disintegrated, and we had to have that done.
Yeah.
So
We couldn't find anybody that even knew or had the expertise. It's the same thing we're having with the stone wall in front of Old Town, that part that it collapsed
yeah,
and you don't even want to touch it because it's just going to get worse.
yeah.
But trying to find somebody that even knows how to fix it.
So as you can see,
That's stuff we gotta.
it's underground, above ground, everywhere in between.
Yep.
But it's what keeps it interesting and fun. It really is. And there are just so many great people in this community that want to, jump in, volunteer their time, do projects, and it really helps, really does. Right, anything else? Shall we wrap it
I
up?
don't think so.
Right.
So we'll adjourn it.
Right, so who
Should
would
we-
like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Can anybody do it? I make a motion
Anybody?
to adjourn the meeting.
All right. And anybody want to second that?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Favor?
Bye.
Aye.